Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. This is the test for audio from the Mindess Elementary School for tonight's interviews of the new principal. Test, test, test. Test 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. This is a test of the audio broadcasting from the Mindess Elementary School. Test 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. We are broadcasting live tonight at 5:30 from the school library for a candidates forum to interview candidates for the next Mindess School principal. Excellent. This concludes our audio test.
Good evening, Ashland community. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Michael Kyra, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and we want to thank you very much for tuning in to listen to our second of 3 Mindess Principal Community Forums. Today we are joined by Dr. Frank Rothwell. Dr. Rothwell is currently the principal of the Brophy Elementary School in Framingham, Mass. He has been the principal of Brophy since 2010. Dr. Rothwell has his Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Leadership from Lesley College, a Master's in Education and Educational Technology and Leadership from George Washington University, and a BA with a major in Psychology from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thank you, Dr. Rothwell, for being here with us. Thank you to the parents who joined us live, and thank you to all of you who are joining us listening in to what Dr. Rothwell has to say. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Rothwell before we ask some questions from our committee forum here. And we'll just ask you to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you've been doing, and in particular, why you want to be the next principal here in Ashland at the Mindess Elementary School.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for everybody's time. Sure. Frank Rothwell. I've been in education. I believe this is my 30th year. It might be my 29th. I'm not quite 100% sure. I think it's my 30th, though. I started in Plymouth. I worked in high schools. I was a high school history teacher. Came to Framingham. My wife grew up in Framingham. I've lived here in the Metro West area, in Framingham specifically, since 1999. I got a job at Framingham High School, taught history there. Then I became department head there, and then I became a vice principal there. It's a big school, when I was there, it was about 2,200 students, and I was in charge of essentially a quarter of it. You follow a grade through, is the way we did it back then. Now it's a house system. In my 6th or 7th year as principal, there was an opening at Brophy Elementary School. I think they did 2 intergalactic searches. They couldn't find anyone that they were happy with, and they asked if I would be willing to start the next school year as an interim principal. I was in the Lesley program. All my professors were elementary, background. They were all former elementary administrators, and they strongly encouraged me to take it. I was looking to do something a little bit different, and I fell in love with it, completely fell in love with it. So that was back in 2010. A couple of months later, they made me permanent principal, and I've been there since. So this is my 11th year there. I'm a dad. I have 2 kids. My daughter's 18, in the middle of a college search process, which is awesome. April 1st, big date. And my son's 11. And when I think of my son, I think about my own work as an elementary principal. Like a lot of children missed out on some pretty significant developmental years in person. I know Ashland came back a lot sooner than we did in Framingham. I love working with kids. I love working with teachers. I love working with parents. Yeah. Why Ashland? 11 years at one school. I've pretty much, most of the people in the building I've hired. It's what I think is a pretty highly functioning school. Things work well there. And I'm just looking for some new challenges. I want new challenges, but I don't want them to be too crazy. Like, I'm not really interested in central office work. I like working with kids and teachers. So as I started to look, through school spring, I saw Ashland. A couple of things. One, the staff here is asking around. I've heard really good things about the staff. 2, the central office staff seems to have a good vibe about them, and people admire the work that they do. By all accounts, there seems to be good relationships amongst departments as well as amongst the schools. That's something that I'm interested in. Right now, I'm one of 9 principals in 9 elementary schools in Framingham, so we kind of have like this horizontal model, which is what's needed there, and I'm looking to work in a more vertical model, which is what's here. It's intriguing to me. I think I would really enjoy doing that. And the building project, when I was at Framingham High School, another thing that resonated with me when I was at Framingham High School, we refurbished the building that we were in. So we would close a wing, a third of it, move kids into these portable classrooms. They would fix that. We'd move them back. We did that 3 times, and it's going to be a lot of work, but it's something that I feel pretty confident that I could manage, and I'm intrigued by that. I also like the size of the school. I like big schools. I like to get to know a lot of different families. So there's a lot of reasons why Ashland, and it's 14 minutes from my house. And I'm not I mean, if you look at my background and my resume, I worked in Plymouth for I think 8 years, 9 years. Then I've been in Framingham for 21. So I'm not a job jumper. I'm not, that's just not my jam. Wherever I go, I'm going to give it my best and invest myself in that community. So that's it. Thanks.
Open it up.
Can I ask for people's names or no? You don't want to do that?
Yeah, if folks are comfortable doing that.
Sure. Hi, Frank. I was able to meet you as part of the first round of the process. Gabby Abrams. I'm here to represent the Site Council, also a parent of a 5th grader. Congratulations on making it to the stage in the process.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Davis. I am a parent in the district. I have 2 children currently here at the Mindess School. And so whoever is the next principal will, kind of be in charge of my kids. I'm also part of our local CPAC, which is a Special Education Parent Advisory Council. So I'm also here representing those interests as well.
Super.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tiago Godoy. I'm here as a parent. My kids actually just starting here in Ashland next year. And I'm already thinking 3 years into the future when they're here with a new school and hopefully,
Tiago, you're on the ball. That's good.
Yeah. And I feel like I know you because I graduated from Framingham High in 2007.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah.
I had hair back then, Tiago. Nice to see you again.
Hi, my name is Moala. If you see in the movie Moana, it's just one letter off with just an L in case you are looking for the phonetics of my name. I have 2 kids. My daughter is in 2nd grade, so she'll be in 3rd grade in the Mindess School next year. And then I have a son who'll be starting kindergarten in the fall.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, my name is Heidi Wazlowski. I'm here as a parent. I have a 3rd grader here in this building, and I have a 1st grader at Warren School. I also work at the Warren School.
Super.
Hi, I'm Kate McDonald. I'm president of the Ashland K-12 PTO. So I'm here representing the PTO and a little bit myself. I have 3 kids. One's in 7th grade at middle school, and then a 4th grader who will have 1 more year here, and a 1st grader who will be hopefully joining in the new school in a couple years. So we're excited to have that process.
Super. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Megan Brown. I have a 4th grader right now, so she'll be also here for the next year for the 5th grade. Not representing anybody though.
Super. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, Moala.
So I'm really glad to know that you live close and that you have already established relationships with the Framingham community. So as you think about the stakeholders within Ashland, which are the students, the parents, as well as the community, what do you think, how do you think about, as if you were to become principal of Mindess, how you'd reach out to those stakeholders to establish yourselves within the town of Ashland?
So that's a great question. Thank you for that. There's a multitude of ways, and one of the things I think we should do as educators, teachers specifically, right, is try to meet people where they're at. So I wouldn't want to impose something that people weren't comfortable with. So things that I've done in the past is I've done coffees at people's houses, like if they're willing to open up their door and have a coffee with other parents, let's say, and myself attend. I did several of those when I was at the high school. Brophy School, that I'm the principal of now, is kind of on the northwest quadrant of Framingham, and many of the families that we serve are in the southeast quadrant of Framingham. Many of those parents, not all, many, don't have reliable transportation to get to us. So the vice principal and I have done office hours at a community center down there where we're engaging with parents. We also partnered with Jewish Family Services, and through them we're able to get families food, clothing, and the like. Try to meet their needs that way through the community center. Open houses. One thing that I was telling Mr. Kittleson, Todd, was that we're going to do our PTO meeting. We haven't had a live in-person PTO meeting. We're like, you guys kind of went mask-free way before we did, and brought kids back before we did. But we're doing our first live PTO meeting in a couple of years, and the exciting part of that is the parents can come in and get a tour of the building, because there's many of our K and 1 parents have not ever stepped foot inside the building. So I thought that was a tragedy. So I worked with the PTO, and we came up with that as an idea to get people in the building. I give a great tour of the building. They filmed a movie there with Matthew McConaughey. Just going to throw that out there. And again, like kind of any other, we at our school, we've tried like social media ways to connect with folks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or Insta, as my 18-year-old tells me. I don't find that resonates super well with our parents. And what I was, again, talking about earlier is we have a couple of communication means. One is called Blackboard. I don't think you guys have it here presently, but we can send a text, an email, and a voicemail in 3 different languages out to parents with not that many clicks of the software, and we rely on that heavily. Like, I use that a lot. That being said, and our parents prefer that. I used to do like a weekly memo that would go out, but I found that parents were getting frustrated that something would happen on a Monday and they weren't getting it until Saturday. So again, working with the PTO and my school council, we just decided that as quickly as I can get messaging out, I would get it out. So we don't do a weekly thing. But if that's what the community wanted to hear, I'm happy to do that. It's important to connect.
So can you describe your leadership style, and what type of leadership style would you bring to the school, to the students, the teachers, as well as the parents?
Well, to build on what I was just talking about, I guess I would start with, I believe very strongly, and Mr. Carr has unfortunately heard this a couple of times now, because there's a couple of different rounds, right? We're in the relationship business, and I remind people I work with oftentimes that we're in the relationship business. Everything we do starts with building a strong relationship with, whether it be the parent, the child, each other. We're in the relationship business. So I would like to think that my style is that I make efforts to build relationships with kids, with teachers, and with people in the community, our stakeholders. My leadership style is to be, I mean, I think it's, I don't know what my leadership style is per se, but I can tell you like what I believe in. I think it's important that you're visible, that you greet the children when they come in, whether like one morning I might go to parent pickup, which I know is the same here, parent drop off or caregiver drop off, and also greet kids coming off the buses. The next morning I might focus on buses. You know, you want to mix it up and see all the kids with a nice smile, and reverse that at the end of the day. Same with common spaces like the cafeteria. Be where the kids are, where there's large groups of kids, and make connections with kids. Be visible in classrooms, supporting teachers. Let teachers and kids know that I, as the building leader, think what they're doing is very important, because I do think it's very important, of course. Yeah, I think it starts with that. And as far as my leadership style, I'm hands-on when I need to be hands-on, but I think any type of hands-on work has to start with being a good listener and being a good observer and see what the issues are and talk to people. And I think that goes back to Moana's question where, did I say that right? Close, okay. Moana, sorry. I'm sorry. To her question where it's important to connect with the different groups so that you can hear, what do you think the priorities of the next principal should be? What do you think, what do your children think are areas that we need to grow as a school community.
So can you provide me an example of when you've had to deal with conflict between a teacher and a student, or had to coach a teacher based on an incident? And what steps did you take, and what was your process around that coaching style?
Can you loosen that cord just a bit? Okay, thank you. A situation where there's a conflict between a teacher and a student. I think I think it's important that when children are struggling in a classroom, that would be sort of the impetus of a conflict. If a child is struggling in a classroom, I think it's important that we certainly address, like, if there's bad choices being made, but we also look at it more broadly and work with that child, the parents, and the teacher to determine what it is that's impacting the situation where that student is making a bad choice. And then, even more importantly, once you've identified that, whatever that might be, is to use that as an opportunity to teach the child, and teach the child what different decisions could be made, or what alternative. It doesn't even have to be necessarily a good decision, but maybe it's a timeout. You know, you're working with the child where they might get like a timeout pass to go talk to a guidance counselor or a social worker, or the principal or vice principal. Whatever that may be, you sit with the child and work on a plan. So I guess those conflicts, if and when they come up, require time and effort to list. The child has to have a voice on that, especially grades 3, 4, and 5, where the child can express what it is that is upsetting to them or bothering them, that they are unwilling or less willing to follow the direction of the teacher. And I think that typically what happens in conflict in general, now I'm talking in generalities, is people want to push away, and the answer more times than not is to lean in and let's get to the bottom of what's going on. Maybe not in the moment when there's emotions going on, but you take a pause and then revisit it perhaps the next morning and come up with some type of conference, perhaps with a social worker or a guidance counselor, administrator, teacher, where everyone's working together, parent. Okay? Yeah.
So you've addressed the situation where it's the child that is having a problem. But what if it becomes clear to parents and administrators that really it's the teacher is not equipped to handle this particular situation? How do you deal with then coaching the teacher through that process of finding that, a alternate strategy to then reach the child?
Yeah. Thanks for following up with that. So, no one comes to work, and no one comes to school, students, no one comes to work, educators, right, wanting to have conflict with others. And like no one wakes up in the morning and yawns and says, like today I'm just going to really kick hornets' nests and knock books over. Like no one wants to do that. So if you kind of go on that premise, then now we're talking about intentions, right? So people's intentions are that they want things to go well. If looking into the situation, there's a determination, and by the way, the teacher always plays a role. Like whether the teacher did the right thing or the wrong thing, if a child's not responding the way that you want the response to be, then that falls on us as the adults to change what we're doing. So that doesn't mean the teacher's, I don't even like to use the word wrong. That just means we need to reassess the situation and address it differently. And that, a lot of people, when you start talking about behaviors, there's a lot of emphasis on consequence or consequences, whether it be for the teacher or for the child. And I would say that a better way to look at it is what do we all have to learn and change or modify so that it's better. And that's the child. That includes the child, the parent, the principal, the teacher. Okay?
So one of the great things about Framingham is that you have such a diverse array of students with different ethnic backgrounds, and the same goes to Ashland as well. So I just wanted to learn about any diversity programs that you've implemented in Framingham, and if you think any of it is transitionable to Ashland.
Yeah. So our staff has done some work with anti-racism in the last couple of years. We have a grassroots group of teachers that got together, and they asked for some time last year specifically where they could do some work with each other, with the staff, and I think it's been pretty valuable work. I also last year personally worked with a coach, an anti-racist coach, because I found that terms were being used and discussions were being had that I thought I was, what's the right word, schooled in, and I didn't know as much as I wanted to know or needed to know. And that was a very valuable experience. I think it's great that things have shifted, certainly in our country, but I think it's great that things have shifted and some marginalized groups of people now feel as though they have a voice, and they do have a voice. I think that's a good thing, and I want to ride that momentum, right? So one of the things that we have we have a little transition going on in Framingham right now. We got a new superintendent. We have a assistant superintendent, excuse me, of diversity and equity. It's an assistant superintendent position in our district. And I've reached out to her as to how we can more formally lay out a plan in the school so that all staff and all students are have a voice and feel recognized and feel what every child should feel: needed, wanted, valued. And then as a district, we're also working on that, where a workshop I just attended last week, we talked about dialogue tables with third, fourth, and fifth graders, where I can't wait to do this in our school, where you literally just pull groups of children and kind of go through some questions as to what they feel about the school and hear their voices and make shifts to your policies and procedures as a result of that. So there's also sidebar, there's also a lot of work being done in Framingham presently that I support, where classroom libraries are being looked at so that the books are more inclusive of, all kinds of different stories with different races and cultures and ethnicities and binary people, and more inclusive overall. And I think that that's really important work, and I think it's important for that to be executed well, to include as many stakeholders as possible.
Can you explain a little bit about what you think your vision is for being a general administrator and liaisoning with the special education department? And as the principal of a building, you're not just principal of general education staff, but you're principal of all of the staff, and how your role as the administrator would be in making it a cohesive school environment.
So you said something that I'm not familiar with, so I'm sorry to make you go back to the beginning of your question. ABA zoning, is that what you said?
No. So being the administrator of the full building,
yep,
where it is both general education and special education, and how do you make it a cohesive building and for among the staff and also the children?
So, yeah, thank you. I think it's a school community. It's a town community. It's a school community. What I like about this system, as I mentioned, is it's very vertical, right? So all these kids are going to kind of follow each other right up through they graduate. So it's important that they all understand each other and know about each other's needs and have opportunities to socialize with each other as well as learn together. If I can give you a couple examples from Brophy, my experience at Brophy, when I arrived there, there were three, within the one school, there were three very separate programs. There was a transitional bilingual education program where that was, on each grade, there were 4 classes. In one of the classrooms, the children were taught in Spanish. Another classroom, the language spoken in the home was Spanish, and those were our SEI students, and they were in a standalone classroom. They didn't mix with the other classrooms. And then the other 2 classrooms were called standard classrooms. So, and I've explained this in my previous interviews. So I didn't like that, like right away, I didn't like that at all. It seemed very segregated. But I was coming from the high school, and my first experience in elementary, and I couldn't, I knew I had to wait and build trust and build relationships that I mentioned earlier. So I waited a year and I observed and I listened, and we started working on plans together collaboratively on how we could integrate those children in the other classrooms. And we essentially did where we had the standalone class taught in Spanish stayed there, and then the SEI children and the other 2 children that were taught in the other 2 classrooms where they were taught in English, we integrated those classrooms. A lot of work to prepare for that. And then the standalone where they were taught in Spanish, those children integrated whenever we could. Lunch, recess, specials. We mixed them with the other classes. So that was pretty good. Recently, that was a nice thing to see evolve. Recently, at the start of the pandemic, we started an ASD classroom in our school. And I will admit to you, I've worked with children with autism, but not a sub-separate ASD classroom. So it was really important to me, as well as the staff that we hired for these positions, that those children are included, and we do some training amongst the rest of the staff and the student body as to those students' needs. So we've spent a lot of time. I mentioned this in the previous interview, that I was very lucky because the governor or commissioner said that students with special needs, such as our ASD students, they came back first, and I basically was going into the building every day, and it was 1 classroom. Now it's 2 classrooms. We've added the next grade, right? So there was 1 classroom of students that were in that program, and I got to really learn fast and quickly, about their needs and what the teachers need to support them. So that being said, we're working constantly trying to include those kids in other areas of the building and do inclusion with them whenever possible with their aides. And we also are spending significant time during professional time, staff meetings and whatnot, where the staff is learning about those students. And the 2 teachers that we have, they're amazing, and they just created the most thorough autism awareness week, array of opportunities for everybody in our school to participate that I'm going to share with parents. It's actually going to be really phenomenal. So I think that answers your question, but if you want to do, the other thing is philosophically, whenever possible, I want teachers to push into classrooms and support kids instead of pull kids out whenever possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes kids need to be pulled, but over the years, we've really moved to do a co-teaching model with the special ed teacher in a general sense. But I don't know if that was an answer to your question.
Yes, so I know that in districts that have more of the horizontal model, that most often what we would call specialized programming, other districts call substantially sub-separate programming, they tend to cluster in 1 or 2 of the elementary schools. And it sounds like that had been happening in Framingham, but very recently you've been involved in creating those programs in your school. So that's fantastic.
So I think language programs and special ed programs,
Yes.
when I started in elementary, were what you're describing, where they were kind of clustered in 2 or 3 of the 9 schools, and now there's much more of an effort to spread those programs out and spread the children out so that they're having access to all the schools.
Right. And so one of the really neat things about the new building that is being built is that the spaces that are designated in the plan and the model, and this is how the state reimburses and everything for special education, are really
In the center.
really in the classroom space.
Yep.
With our other classrooms. And I think it's a really big jump here in Ashland to have that setup and that model. I think it's going to really push our special education programs forward and allow for more push-in support for students who are in inclusion classrooms or general education classrooms. And so I think we're really, at least for me, I'm really looking for an administrator who's going to, really push that forward.
I saw that as well, and you're smiling. I don't know if the camera is on you or me, but I saw that as well, and I think that's the right way to go. Like that's where my heart and my philosophy is.
Yes, and so again, I was just looking to see that you do have some experience with those program building. We're building programs in our schools, starting at Warren and here at Mindess. We're going to be doing more, and at the high school with the Learning Center and all of these models. So it's I think it enriches the learning environment for all students. So that was the point of my question. So thank you. I do have another question.
Can I give you another way back? If I go in my time machine, when the district was looking at ways to save some money, it started as that. This was I was a high school vice principal. They came up. They realized that Framingham was spending a high amount of money to move kids out of district for EDBD, emotionally, I think it's just ED now. They dropped the BD. Emotionally disturbed, I think is the right, disabled, excuse me, emotionally disabled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to misspeak. To move those children out of district. And there was a question, well, could we bring it in district? And they said we could, but it might take a couple of years before we can get like an administrator to kind of oversee that. And I said, I'll do it. Like, I'll work with those kids. Like that's so I joke with the director now, who's a good friend of mine, that I was the first director of that program when it came to the high school. And it's been there, so I've been away for 11 years, so it's probably been there for 14 or 15 years. And those kids should go, in my opinion, should attend Framingham High School with the correct supports.
And so can you explain to us your philosophy on discipline and also specifically discipline for students with IEPs? Again, who may have behavioral plans in place and other emotional issues that, make discipline a little bit of a tougher challenge to sort out.
Yeah, sure. I think like again, the focus is always on the consequence, right? Like people tend to gravitate, if that's the right word, to the like, what's the consequence? And a big question for anyone that's interviewing as a principal is he going to be a marshmallow, or is he going to like hold the hard line with these kids? The answer to your question, or you started with what's my philosophy on discipline. Discipline only works if it's effective, right? So if you consequence somebody and they stop doing that behavior, then good job, like you did a good job. But to continuously consequence someone and it's not changing their behavior, again, I go back to there needs to be an inward opportunity to look inward and see like what we're doing as a school that we need to change to meet that child's needs so they don't require some type of discipline. So my philosophy is I'm not like, if I have to discipline a child, like I will discipline a child, but that would never just be discipline. It would be working with the parents, working with the teacher, again, trying to assess what are the conditions that child made a bad choice, or, and to your point earlier, maybe the conditions in the classroom were such, again, maybe not anyone's fault, but the conditions in the classroom were such that the child didn't know how to manage the situation. So it's our job to teach the child, teach the teacher, teach each other what we need to do to set up an environment where that child's going to make decisions that are safe and decisions that contribute to that child, he, she, they, accessing the curriculum, and others in the room accessing the curriculum. So it's not a straight answer. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to beat around the bush. Like, if you want to follow up, like, I can be more specific. It's just, or give me an example. Like, I don't enjoy, nor do I, discipline children for their disability, if that's the question you're asking me. Like when a child has got a disability and it's well documented, and I'm trying to think of an example. It's like disciplining someone with Tourette's who's like shouting out in class. Like, you can't do that. It's not appropriate. So
Maybe to follow on kind of on a similar subject, but what's your philosophy in helping teach the kids kindness? And anti-bullying. It's kids are going to middle school, they get meaner, but I think teaching kindness to our kids is such an important skill. So what have you done in Framingham to bring these types of programs, and what's your philosophy on bringing that to the schools?
Yeah. So if you want children to be kind, then you need to probably teach them kindness, right? So our school, like, just as a general, whatever you want to see, you should probably spend some time to teach it. So our school, my school in Framingham, it's a very diverse school, right? So there's children and families coming from, essentially all over North and Central and South America, for the most part, some from overseas. To assume that their understanding of polite words and holding the door open and walking on the right side of the hallway, to assume that they would all come to us with those, knowing those things, is silly, right? So we have the present social emotional, I don't know what her title is. There's a person for the district who basically is pushing out social emotional curriculum to all the schools now, right? She started as a vice principal at Brophy School, and I worked with her, and she's lovely and wonderful. She introduced me to PBIS and the necessity and need that we should have a lesson on how to behave in the hallway. We should have a lesson for the children on how to access the cafeteria. We should have a lesson for the children for how to line up to go out to recess. We should have a lesson like all behavioral lessons. And from there, once you set your standards, or your groundwork for your standards, what she's also introduced in her new role that I embrace is we have like sort of monthly themes. Could be kindness, and everything, all the lessons that the teachers are doing in their open circle lesson in the beginning of the, their morning meeting lesson in the beginning of the day. We don't use open circle anymore, scratch open circle. Their morning meeting lesson in the beginning of the day, they're emphasizing whatever the theme of the month is. And that should be laid out ahead of time. Teachers should collaborate with the decision makers on that, because they have to execute it in their classrooms, and there should be lessons associated with it. There's plenty of like third-party like curricula institutions that you could purchase it from, but enough people are doing it that if I believe you're doing it here, because Mr. Kittleson has a nice calendar with all the different, I'm all on board with that. He was talking about how they do calls of the month, day, week.
Good news call of the day.
good news call of the day. Great idea. Great idea. Yeah.
Jumping on the fact that there's a big issue with bullying and mental health issues right now, especially after the pandemic, do you have any maybe programs in place or experiences that you've decided that will help this situation? Because I think going forward, it's really important that we bring those to our school so the children are prepared for this with like higher rates of incidents.
Do you think? Can I ask you a question? Do you think it's a result? Wait, where's the names? Hi, Kate. Sorry. Do you think it's a result, Kate, of the pandemic? Is it, like I want to make sure I understand the beginning of your question.
I feel like there's been. I guess I'm only speaking because I haven't loud enough. I have an older child who's in middle school, and I feel like some of the issues that are more middle school based are now creeping down towards here that we've seen. And maybe this is in light of more electronics or social media accounts as well, and the parents just put them on more social media that were then 2 years ago. I would never have given my 5th grader a phone. Now 5th graders come to school with phones. So maybe it's a little bit of both, but the pandemic has caused a lot of our masks coming off, or I think they've lost a lot of social skills in the last couple years. So I don't know if you had any ways that you could bring to our school to help address this, or ways that we could work together with your staff, with the parents and the children, so we can work all this together.
That's a great question. I'm going to acknowledge that the intensity of young people being on social media has created a wave of problems that I'm not sure we all have super great answers to, because I was kind of hoping when we all got back that would sort of reduce, but I don't think it has. And you can see the frustration with kids, right? So I mean, we're all probably holding on to a cell phone, and like you press your button and there's a like it's a great device, it's immediate, but that's not how life functions, right? You raise your hand in the class and the teacher might not call on you right away. So it creates anxiety. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but in my opinion, it creates levels of anxiety that we've never really seen. Do I have an answer? It's a great question. So yeah, I mean, I think my answer is to do the things that we know are working. Like I don't want to quote Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee talks about how when a force is coming at you, instead of trying to block the force, like use the force that's coming at you and move with it, you know? Social media doesn't seem to be going away. Kids on devices outside of school doesn't seem to be going away. So how can we, I think the question before us, all of us, this is not a Frank Rothwell decision. We all have to find a path here. How can we manage that? I mean, we can build in like different breaks and opportunities throughout the day, and have children positive behavioral intervention systems. Have children try to earn rewards, and those rewards might include like jumping on a Chromebook or something. I'm not suggesting we have kids on Chromebooks all day. Don't misunderstand me. But I just think that you nailed it. Like this is, I think when I try to reflect on all the anxiety that I've seen as a principal of children that have returned from the pandemic, and now they got their masks off, which there was another little bump of anxiety the last couple of weeks. I think it's a result of, in the last 2 years, when they were feeling that type of anxiety, perhaps, it's a theory, when they were feeling that kind of anxiety in their home, they probably had a device within arm's reach or so where they could kind of jump on a device, and it's very rewarding. Like, again, you press and swipe and it reacts immediately. I've seen it with my own 11-year-old. So I think it's important that classroom teachers mix things up to keep kids' attention. I think it's really important that lessons are, when I say tight, like the teacher has worked out the choreography ahead of time, and there's breaks built in. Some kids just need to like stand up and get the wiggles out. And whether that's, okay, we've worked hard for 20, like we met the time, like maybe yesterday was 20 minutes, today it's 22 minutes. You were all writing for 22 minutes. Let's stand up and do dance party and play music for 30 seconds just to get the energy out. Specific to, you asked a question and you mentioned, part of your question was anti-bullying. I think that goes with any school, and I know Mindess has it, they have it, I don't have it memorized, I have a copy of it in here, like core values. And when you meet with children, you work with them, like how is it that what's happening, not placing blame again, but like what your conflict on the playground, tell me where that fits in with these core values. It doesn't look kind to me, it doesn't look caring. It doesn't look like anyone is taking responsibility, and you work through it within the context of values, and you just keep promoting those values. People all have bad days, but you promote those values. But bullying is as you know, you probably know, is a legal term in Massachusetts now, and that typically requires like an investigation and documentation and like when it gets to the level of bullying. Oftentimes it's peer conflicts, and if you can fix it when it's a peer conflict, it doesn't get to bullying. But repeated, it's bullying, for sure.
Hi, Frank. I'll give you a little bit of a break from sharing your current experience and kind of just seek to understand what you've learned about Mindess. So over the last week and a half, the most important work we do in schools is teaching and learning. And that encompasses all sorts of things, social emotional learning, all of it, right?
Sure.
Teaching and learning. So over the last week and a half, since you've had this opportunity to think about becoming the principal of Mindess and being invited back to this process, you've probably had a chance to look into Mindess. And so lots of data review, document review. What have you learned about Mindess's strengths? And where do you see the opportunities in the review that you've conducted?
Where do I see opportunities? Yeah. Well, it sounds like I'm I don't know the right word, placating. Like I've actually, like I have, it's my, like I said, 30th year in education, and I've lived in this area for over 20. So I know a lot of people, and I've asked around, and by all accounts, the vibe, I don't know the right word to use, there's good juju here. There's positivity. There's like people, for the most part, like the staff here, and find the staff are good to work with. That usually means that they're serving children that are fun to work with. I don't know of children that are not fun to work with, but I'm just saying like the, yeah, I did my internet dig and found plenty of stuff on the internet, but I find that if I just talk to trusted people that I know in other districts that have worked with folks from this district, maybe some folks in this district, that's a good way to gauge things as well. Additionally, I've heard the same thing about the central office group, is that demanding, there's demands, but they're supportive. I would say this if you weren't here as well. Yeah. That they're supportive, and they support each other, and I mean, one thing that was really nice to hear is that they have fun together. Like that's awesome. I don't think anyone's really had a lot of fun the last 2 years necessarily, but I mean, when you work with children, like there should be a lot of smiling and laughter. I'm not saying that I'm not experiencing that in my present situation. Don't misunderstand me, but it's important to know that where I go, that's like a value. The blueprint, looking at the superintendent, I assume it's the superintendent's, maybe it's the district's blueprint. The top left quadrant focuses on the well-being of not only children, which is what most blueprints or mission statements would say, but it says the children and the staff. Like, yes, sign me up for that. I want to be a part of that. I want to be on the positive side of that and help others, and sometimes I might need some help, right? Yeah, like I get the sense you didn't want me to talk about MCAS scores. No, I don't. I would rather not. I mean, MCAS scores are important. They're important, and students doing well are important, and how you organize your MCAS tests and all that stuff's important. Don't get me wrong, but in the end, it's for me at this point in my career, I'm looking to land someplace that is that my skill set will be utilized, and that I'll enjoy working with the people I'm working with. And by all accounts, that seems to be this place. Sure.
Your reference to MCAS actually has to do with my question, which is about testing. My third grader talks a lot about the testing. He has to do the pre-test before the unit starts, the post-test when it's done, and it's going to be his first year of MCAS, so there's MCAS prep and MCAS prep and MCAS prep, and he's already feeling some anxiety in the third grade about testing. So what is your approach to testing and how we get the data we need from children without stressing them out too much?
Yeah. So, I wasn't asked to set the bar. I wasn't part of that conversation, right? So the federal government has guidelines. Mostly, I bring them up because there's access testing as well for English learners, right? The state has guidelines, and the town has got guidelines. And then the school usually has a couple of guidelines, right? That may be in addition, as far as what they want to see from testing. So, I mean, I teach a class on formative and summative assessments at Fitchburg. Formative and summative assessments are important. I think we learn if you take what we know. I don't know if the camera can get the visual, but if you take what we know, we learn on the fringes of what we know, right? And we push the circle out. And the way to get to those fringes is to usually create the right amount, a little bit of anxiety. But when I hear stories from parents, and again, going back to your initial question, right, about like learning from people, it saddens my heart to hear that your son is coming home and reporting anxiety because there's a lot of emphasis on the prep and everything else. Teachers, no matter what, are going to feel, and I really emphasize as a building leader, I de-emphasize the comparisons across classrooms, right? One of the things, not our present superintendent, but a previous superintendent he used to do all the time in Framingham would put up, in your point about the schools being very different, you know, and their needs being very different. There's 9 elementary schools in Framingham. Two superintendents ago or something in Framingham, they used to put up the different schools' MCAS scores. And it was like, oh man, like these are my colleagues, and like you know, the principal that had the best scores was all smile, like it was just, ugh. So I remember meeting with our present superintendent and asking, could we not do that? Like, I don't know what that serves. Like, that school is very different than that school to this school as far as the needs of the children. But that being said, formative assessments, like teachers checking in with kids, like super valuable as far as, are the kids getting the lesson? You know, I'm trying to look at you because you asked the question, but I'm also trying to catch a vibe. Like, am I getting head nods like this, or am I getting head nods like this? Like this, like that's a formative, a sense of a formative assessment where I might change, like what I'm talking about or something. It should mean that whatever I'm talking about isn't resonating. I need to restate it. So, I think if your curriculum is solid and your scope and sequence is solid, it sounds like there's a new adoption of Lucy Calkins for reading and writing. I should have wrote down the math. Envisions is the math. If those programs are like that teachers are relying on are solid, and the experiences kids are getting across the classrooms, the scope and sequence is aligned to the standards, then the MCAS scores should come out fine, right? I would de-emphasize with your third grader as a parent. I would. You're more than welcome to de-emphasize. And I, as a building leader, I can't say what I would do here because I don't know what the culture is here or what central office wants, like a principal to do. And I would execute what they want as long as it's within like ethical standards, which I'm sure it is. They're important, but they're not the end-all be-all. They're not the end-all be-all. And I think that, you know, I'm not one to have like a rally before the big test and big auditorium. Like, I think that the test is the test. Like, go in and take the test and know that you're as prepared as you're going to be, and we'll pick up the pieces from there. And as educators, we should certainly look at those summative assessments and see by the standard, like, wow, we didn't do a very good job teaching this standard, and then dive deep, like, what did we do, what didn't we do, or what did we do that didn't meet that standard, and adjust our curriculum and our instruction. But it breaks my heart to see young people stressed out about it. I've seen it with my own kids. I don't know when the age is that they should feel like a reasonable level of anxiety and stress, but I think third grade is a little young to be stressed out about tests. I would tell your son to just do what the teacher says, work hard, and wherever it falls, it falls. I hope that didn't just sink my...
Do I have time for one more? Sure. Talking about the fun in school, a part of the PTO, we bring a lot of enrichments and fun activities. Is there something that you brought to your school that you really liked or was really fun, that was memorable for the kids' education?
Does it have to be education?
No, it did not. Just anything fun.
So, again, we didn't do anything for like...
Well, the last couple of years.
Yeah, the last couple of years. And we have a new PTO. I've always gotten along really well with my PTO. We try to have some good chuckles and whatnot and laughs. And they came up with this idea. They wanted to do like a Halloween thing. And culturally, there were some children in our school that like dressing up isn't like their vibe. So we really tried to come up with something. So we held this in October around Halloween. We held this like outdoor... We were going to do trunks. The cars were going to line up, and you could go to each trunk and get candy. And I talked about, like, our food service person it made it very clear that we're not supposed to do anything with food. Okay. So we got rid of the cars and the trunks, but we just had, like, a bouncy house, and we had, like, target practice and all these different, like, events and games. And the kids hadn't been out for so long that it was so awesome to see them outside with their masks off. Like, no one had, there were kids that we hadn't seen their face in 2 years, right? And, like, I'm getting chills just talking about it. Like, it was just so, and if you didn't want to do come in dressed in a costume, you didn't have to. Like, and parents, some parents thanked us, like, that they were so pleased that their child could still participate, and it wasn't just Halloween themed, you know. So there's that. We do the most incredible multicultural fair, and it's being taped, so I can't be specific, but I've been to other multicultural fairs, and they're nothing like ours. Ours is the real deal, and that's pretty authentic with the food that the different cultures make, and like they go all out. The Brazilian table is just unbelievable. My wife is Costa Rican, so she usually does a Costa Rica table. I'm Portuguese. I don't do the table, but we have a teacher who's also Portuguese from the same area of Portugal that my family's from. She does a great Portugal table. I mean, it's really like a neat thing. It's all hands on deck. All the parents get involved, and it's a source of pride in our community. And tragically, we haven't been able to do it. We were gonna like try to whip it together in the spring, but we're like, no. Like, we got to do it right, so we'll do it in the fall.
So I'm going to end on the same question that we ended with our candidate yesterday. There are obviously a great number of stakeholders who you deal with on a regular basis as a building principal, but probably the three most important are our students, our staff, and our parents. If we were to talk to your students, staff, and parents, how is each different group going to describe you?
Oh, that's a cool question. I think the parents are very grateful for the high level of communication, especially through the pandemic. I've received that feedback directly and indirectly, and I think that they appreciate the fact that my messaging to them, I'm always trying to keep it positive. A lot of PSAs. There's one that I'm actually working on that I haven't sent out yet. But just to give you an idea, like I'll send everything from like something that's going on in the community that should be fun for people, and again, it's through text, email, and voicemail. But there's one that I'm thinking of working on, going back to the, I forget who asked the social media question, right? And I want to write it precisely before I send it out, and that is that when we grew up watching the news, I don't want to say was like, I'm not looking for a word like bias, but it was certainly filtered, right? We didn't see the atrocities that happened during, we saw pictures of war, but we didn't see the atrocities that happened during war. But what we're seeing in our school is a lot of our kids are on their phones and whatnot, going back to that, like seeing things like really extreme. Yes, they're probably way more desensitized than we were at that age as us, the adults. But I just wanted to send some type of public service message to parents that to just make sure they're checking their kids' devices, because those messages are extreme. But I think I think I have a really good relationship with parents. I think they like our staff. I know a lot of principals, when it comes to placement, they get a lot of calls. I get close to zero, maybe one a year, because the staff is so solid at our school as well. The other two groups were staff and then students. Yeah, the staff, I think the staff respects me, and they respect the fact that I respect them. I think that they also, I think, appreciate the fact that my job, like, I deal with a lot of stuff and keep it out of their world so that they can do their job as effectively as they can. Yeah, I think the staff is, like I think I mentioned, I have really good relationships with a lot of staff members, and I remind myself that, like, there is a line. I'm still their the administrator in the building, so like, I'm not Facebook friends with them or like, and that type of thing. But I think they're all pretty cool. And then kids, like, of course, like, kids are going to say like positive things. It's a great question, but like, kids are awesome. They're the most positive people on the planet. Like, yeah. I mean, I could go, like, they just say awesome things. The question reminded me when the presidential election was going on and we were voting in our school. I remember a first grader came up to me and said, "Hey, President Rothwell, good luck in today's election." Do you know what I mean? Like they're awesome. Like, I hope you win. It's like, I'm so touched that you hope I win. I'm not really running for president, and I don't think anyone's going to take my job. But like kids are great. Yeah.
Any final parting words for us as you say goodbye to the group?
Parting words. I appreciate you guys taking an hour out of your early evening. You all have children, and that means a lot. It just shows me the commitment that the vibe that I've gotten from central office, the staff. Saw a few kids. It was early release today, so I was kind of hoping to see like how they interact as they were leaving. And I'm like, where are the buses? No buses. But I saw some of them in the aftercare program in the cafeteria. Yeah, I hope I'm your person. And if I'm not, it's been a great process, and I really appreciate all your time and energy. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rothwell. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope to see you again tomorrow. A reminder to the folks that are tuning in, we have one last candidate tomorrow at 5:30 here in the Mindess Library. And we hope that you will fill out the form that was shared yesterday, the day before. It will be shared again tonight. And we look forward to hearing your feedback. So thank you very much for participating in this process.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Can I shake your hand? Everyone okay with that in COVID land? Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Good questions. Thank you so much. There's no such thing as being late when you're a parent. Thanks. Nice to see you again.
So one of your colleagues is a dear old friend.
Who's that? Oh, Larry Wolfe. He's great.
Oh, I don't know.
I think they're from MSA with
Yeah?
Larry Wolpe used to be a DJ. He was a what? Oh, I didn't hear that.